All right, and we're back. We're back for another exciting episode of Clash of Cinema. We're gonna hit an interesting one this time, because we wanted to kind of coincide this one with the upcoming release of the big summer movies. So the
Mhm.
next couple that we do are gonna hit a couple of the big ones coming out this year. So we wanted to kind of look back and see what came before and the controversies that kind of aligned
It
those movies.
it almost makes you wonder, are they revisiting some of these properties because they were controversial the first time, or just because, enough time's passed and they want to make some more money?
Yeah, that's a good question because when, you know, for today we're talking about Masters of the Universe, which has got a new movie coming out this year. They've been talking about a movie for Masters for like I think the last 20 years on and off. There's been conversation, hey, we're gonna make a new one, we're gonna make a new one. It got to a point where I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll believe it when I see it. Here we
Yeah,
are.
we
It's
are.
it's coming. So this is pretty big. So that I think I think maybe it is, maybe it's this, hey, we had this thing, let's make it so it's more, let's make some more money, let's find a way to make
But maybe
the
also like this is more what we wanted, and maybe we learned from the first one, and here's
right.
what we're doing this time.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too, and that's part of what's going to kind of surround the controversy of the
Oh,
first film that came
mhm,
out. So interesting, so we're talking Masters of the Universe 1987. This
mhm,
was summer movie, big deal summer movie that year. Because at the time, He-Man was very popular. The toys were still selling well. Even the cartoon was in syndication still.
mhm.
So there was the She-Ra cartoon. There was all this He-Man, merch and things that were surrounding us at that time. So when they announced they were doing a live action movie, this was a big deal, mainly
Mhm.
because this was the first toy line that ever got its own live, it's like a live action movie. This is the first time someone tried that. So it
Yeah.
was a pretty big deal.
So in most other cases up to this point, they'd been like the thing had come out, and then the toy line had, been subsequently released, as a
Mhm.
tie-in, right?
Yes, yeah, pretty much like Star Wars, the toys
That's what I
came
was
out
thinking.
after the movie. But this one, the toys were first, then
Hmm.
came the cartoon, then came the movie. So everything was in that. This was the first time, because during the 80s, actually, I should say during the 70s, preface this, toys, you couldn't make a cartoon based on a toy. That
Mm.
was unheard of. You could make toys based on a cartoon,
Hmm.
but you couldn't do the reverse. It wasn't
Right.
until the Reagan era. Reagan
Hmm.
came in, and that was one of the first things he lifted, was he's like, you can do that. It's fine. Um,
Oh,
but
it
I
was
think
actual like policy.
yes, it was. It was
That's a
FCC.
social cultural norm that they just didn't want to break.
No, it was an FCC policy. It was like one of those things that you could not do this. So he lifted that ban. And what happened was they suddenly like open the floodgates, and everybody's like, hey, we got this toy line, let's make a cartoon based on it. If you look at all like the cartoons from that era,
Yeah.
about 60 to 70% of them were based off of toys: Transformers, GI Joe, He-Man,
Mhm. Yeah.
Centurions, Mask. Like, you could go on forever, but there were
Yeah.
so many. But the idea is like, you could now advertise your toy. There was one little caveat, I think. I'm not 100% sure about this without looking it up, but the caveat was that you had to have some sort of educational component with it, or some sort of like some sort of way in which kids are learning something and not just selling. We're not just advertising a cartoon for, or a toy for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you watch those cartoons, there's always like a little thing at the end where you learn a little something. uh
No.
yes. Knowing is half the battle, all that stuff. Yeah, they did all that kind of stuff. But so now that was gone, now they were able to do all this, and that helped really make He-Man extraordinarily popular at that time. So it was a
Yeah.
natural progression to do this. This is not the first He-Man movie. There
Hmm.
was 2 years earlier, there was He-Man and She-Ra Secret of the Sword that was
Okay.
released in theaters. That was based on the cartoon.
Yeah.
It was kind of the bridge between, introducing She-Ra and then kind of ending the He-Man series and moving
Okay.
into the She-Ra series. So
Okay.
that was. that had come out, and obviously most of the animated movies like that were based off of TV shows weren't huge successes. They did okay.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a movie like this, live action, summer, tentpole movie, blockbuster thingy, that's the purpose. We are putting this out to make money. So this has quite a long history behind it. So we'll talk a little about that. But you watched this for the first time, right? This was your first viewing.
As is often the case for us, this was a first timer for me. So I mean, I'm 36. I was born in '89, so He-Man was just a little bit before my time. I mean, like
Right.
it's not as if the toys and things weren't still around when I was growing up, but I think it was more like coming to an end versus
Hmm.
like, at its heyday,
Hmm.
and it just kind of slipped past me. And so I mean, like I've known about him, through cultural osmosis, but
Hmm.
I never watched the films or the cartoons. I had like
Hmm.
X-Men and Batman toys as a kid.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so this one was kind of like, okay, I saw the trailer for the new one. I plan to see the new one. I love the crazy marketing they have going on for the new one, up to and
Hmm.
including a Castle Grayskull uh multi food item where it's the popcorn bucket. It has a
Hmm.
cup attachment, and when you pull down the
Yep.
mouth, you put your candy in it. So, and then we started to talk about this, and it seemed like a good idea to maybe look back at what came before. And
Hmm.
this was a movie, all right. It had peak '80s feel, like up
Absolutely.
to and including you're gonna remember the actor's name, and I'm not, but it had Mr. Strickland in it as the cop,
James
right? Yeah,
James Tolkien. Yes. Yep.
yeah, that's
Yep.
him,
He
and
played the cop.
he just like is he's one of those guys who plays the same role no matter what name you stick on the character.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so he's the figure of authority who's just like, you're telling me this is a synthesizer, even though like you made sound with it. I don't believe you. You know,
Yeah.
you're a
Right.
slacker, McFly. So
Exactly. Yeah. He basically like you're a slacker kid.
yeah,
I'm the authority.
yeah,
Yeah. He was essentially playing that same part just as a
yeah,
cop instead of a school
yeah,
official.
yeah. So
But
the film itself it ran about an hour 45, and
mhm,
I think that it moved right along. It didn't drag by any stretch. I don't think it
nope.
was a terrible movie. I think that there were probably things about it that they, could have done better. But also, as somebody who doesn't have that He-Man background, there was probably, I mean, I noticed two or three things that just I tangentially, I'm like, wait, I know this thing goes with He-Man. This isn't in the movie. Like, I didn't notice
Mhm.
that they didn't do anything with the cat, right? There's the big green
Right.
tiger.
Battle Cat. Yep. Battle Cat.
So no battle
Correct.
cat. Um,
Yep.
what else? It really
No
kind of felt
Orko.
like, what was that?
No Orko, the little floating character.
That one I didn't
He was
know.
he
So okay, so that one was
he
missed.
he was essential to the cartoon. He was created for the cartoon and became a really important character then. So he was one of the ones that was missing, but they replaced him with another character named Gwildor. So
Yeah, I
you'll know.
liked him. He was their little like science fella
Mhm.
who built the keys.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Then I mean I noticed too no She-Ra. Right?
Correct. Correct.
Um they really didn't do a whole lot with and I mean like you correct me if this is something that really wasn't a big deal in the cartoon anyway, but didn't he have like an alter ego? Like that's the whole kind of the premise of the new one.
Yes.
Like he's going to be on Earth
Correct.
as a different person and then he's going to become
Hmm.
He-Man. They didn't
Yes.
really do
He
anything
is
with that.
correct. Yes. He's Prince Adam
Hmm.
by day and He-Man by
Yes.
night, or when he needs to be, that
One
sort of
needs
deal.
to be, yeah.
Yeah. That again was created for the cartoon. So there's two different He-Mans that started. Now, if you go back to the beginning when He-Man first came out as a toy, each
Yes.
toy was packaged with a little comic book. The comic
Hmm.
book, detailed different adventures for He-Man. He-Man was initially established as just this barbarian-like character, like Conan.
Right.
He was
Yeah.
just this kind of
Something that
wanderer and hero sort
something
of
they could
thing.
sell to the kids though without him, without it being about like killing violence, more like
Correct. Yes.
fantasy violence.
Correct. Yes, exactly. And
Hmm.
so as they created this character, they were like, okay, here's, all these things. So when the movie rights were purchased by
Yeah.
Edward Pressman, I believe, he purchased it before the cartoon came out. So he had these rights back in like 82-ish when the toys first
So
launched.
things that were specific to the cartoon they couldn't use.
That is correct. There
Mhm.
was sort of certain things that they could not play on. Um, so they were able to, secure some things.
Hmm.
So they were able to do like a little bit of this, like the sorceress was created for the cartoon. They were able to
Hmm.
use that character, certain things like that.
That's probably
But
so it's kind of like generic enough that even if like they said no, they could have been like, okay, well, you can't copyright the word sorceress, and then like do their own take if they were like wanted to.
es- essentially, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the whole deal. So they were able to kind of pick that one and use it. But yeah,
Hmm.
most of the stuff was that the cartoon had generated, they weren't really going to use. Because this script had been kind of kicking around for a few years before they finally were able to greenlight it where they greenlit it. And that's the big part is
Hmm.
the studio that greenlit this was Golan Globus's studio, Cannon Films.
I saw
Cannon
that.
Films, Cannon Films was notorious for doing B type movies, low budget,
Hmm.
quick turnaround, you make a quick profit off it, you just keep this sort of,
Yep.
this sort of mill of making these movies that weren't anything great. I mean, they were just, most of what they were making were just really kind of goofy, funny little B type movies like Lou Ferrigno movies, things like that. They were pretty simple, nothing
Yeah.
too
Hmm.
extravagant. This was
Sure.
a different story. This one was their biggest budgeted movie ever. It was 44.3 million, I believe, was the budget,
Wow.
which is huge.
For the time. Yeah.
When Yeah, I mean, you look at like the sets
Hmm.
in the original script was supposed to take place completely on Earth. Like they would just sort of appear on Earth and they were going to just do stuff there. So it would cut down on the costs.
Hmm.
When they hired Gary Goddard, the director, he wrote, produced, and directed a stage show at Universal called some Conan one that
Hmm.
was really successful, and that got him this gig. So
Hmm.
this was his first feature film, and he said we have to have Eternia in here. So
Hmm.
he convinced the studio, saying we're gonna bookend it with Eternia. We'll have it in the beginning, we'll have it at the end, and we'll have
Hmm.
like a whole thing on Eternia. So he hires their production artist, and he essentially designed the set for the Castle Grayskull throne room set there that you see. That was
Yeah.
two sound stages. They actually knocked out a wall of a sound stage and built that thing. It was the biggest set at the time in
Hmm.
any Hollywood production, at least in over 40 years or whatever it was. So it was
Yeah.
huge. Um, and that in and of itself was the biggest part of the budget was all that Eternia stuff.
Yeah.
They really wanted to make it really convincing enough at that time to kind of sell that to the audience in some way. So which
Yeah.
I believe they did. I mean the sets were absolutely impressive
Hmm.
for that introductory scene where Skeletor marches into the
Into the
throne room of
throne.
Grayskull. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's so when and so again they had all these things kind of going into it that they wound up ballooning their budget. This movie had a lot of issues going through. So as they were
Controversies, you
continuing.
said.
Yes, yeah. So initially, Gary Goddard came in. He actually wanted to do an entire Eternia story. Like he wanted the whole movie to take place on Eternia,
Hmm.
and that was shot down because they're like, that's going to be too expensive. We want to keep it at, let's do the Earth stuff, and so
But
that's
also
why they were on Earth.
they wanted to make it relatable to people. It seemed like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the characters
I
and
think
things that
so
were
too.
on Earth were all things you would imagine at the time. You know,
Yes.
the burger joint, the
Hmm.
like stereo shop, like just like the
Right.
whole vibe. People could
Hmm.
watch it and be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense."
High school gym. Yeah, all those things were very,
Mhm.
very easy for people. I think that's a good way of grounding something like this because if you're going to try to sell a story like this to a studio
The
or to an
mainstream audience.
audience, yeah, an audience, you have to think, how can I make them relate to what's going on.
Right.
You think about it, there are not many films out there, and I was thinking about this when I was watching it, that take place on other worlds completely, other than
Hmm.
Star Wars. The in like Crawl would be another film I can think of. There aren't too many. Most of them have Earth in there somewhere, like Star Trek. Even though they're
Yeah.
on all these other worlds, Earth is still a big part of it. So
Hmm.
there's not really a lot of movies that do that. I think that's why, and I know a big part of this too, in that, in not only in the minds of the audience and the fans of this, but also in the minds of the studio and the actors, was that this was based on a toy line. This is a
Yeah.
toy. This is a toy. So I know Cannon, Golan Globus, both of those guys, Mannheim Golan and Yoram Globus, were both basically like, this is a toy. This is a
Yeah.
toy. They kept telling Gary Goddard, this is for a toy. It's a stupid toy line. Let's just do this. It was more or less like they didn't care. They just, let's make the movie. Because the idea of this movie
Yeah.
was, there were several films that they wanted to produce at the time.
Hmm.
They had a few in there. And what the plan was is, we'll make
We'll
these
make
by for
that.
the cheap.
Hmm.
We'll flip the money and we'll make the next movie. So they had, instead, what they said, let's make this movie with a little bit more money, make a lot more money, and
And
then
then
we'll,
for all the others.
yeah. There was
Yep.
two big tentpole movies Golden Globus put out that year. This was the first. The other
Right.
one was Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Ooh.
And both of them suffered
Ooh.
very, very egregiously, because
Mhm.
both of them were box office failures.
Oh.
This was a box office failure. And it essentially sank Canon Films. Not completely at this time. They limped along for a few years, but by 89, 90, they shut down completely.
Ooh.
But this was the start, was Masters of the Universe was the beginning of the end for that company.
Mm.
Um,
How
so
did
was that
how did it do financially? This one.
box office wise, I'm not, let me look that up quick. I don't think it was anything huge, but um it still was, it didn't, I don't think it didn't make its money back to a
Hmm.
point where it just didn't make the money that they were hoping to make it back. I've got that looked up here. Let me see. Okay. It made, um, okay. So the budget was about 22 million. I was off by a little bit, but it grossed 17 million worldwide. So it did make less than the budget
Yeah.
set.
By the time you factor for like promotion and marketing and yeah, I mean that's bad.
Yeah. 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 I think with budget 22, I think with marketing and stuff, I think it got up to about 44
Oof.
million. And then, even Mattel didn't want to make toys for it. They didn't want to do a dedicated line to it. They only made like three figures from
Hmm.
the movie. They made a Gwildor, Blade, and Sauron. Those three characters were in toy, and that was it.
No He-Man?
No, they just used their He-Man that they had from,
Oh, okay.
all along, which looks
Wow.
considerably different. When the movie was cast, the first person cast was Dolph Lundgren.
Hmm.
And he agreed to do it, but he he hated the movie. He has said many times over it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Hated working on it. He said it was a low point in his career to play a toy for for a movie like that. But it was really his first big American movie.
Hmm.
Um, he didn't really speak fluent English. He was Swedish, so he spoke mostly Swedish.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a big issue. They wanted to dub his voice
Yeah.
when they did post, so they let him do his lines. But his contract said he had three shots to dub the movie before
Hmm.
they could dub it over with someone else's voice. So there was a contract in there. And it got to a point where they didn't even bother. They were just like, they were out of money. They got to
Yeah.
the point where they had no money left. They were just like, we're going to leave his voice as is. So they did not
I
they did
actually
not do any
didn't think it
dubbing.
was bad. Like I was
I didn't
listening
either.
through because I mean like worst case scenario, even if he didn't understand what he was saying, like, he what he said sounded fine and cohesive. He didn't
Mhm.
have like tons of spoken word in the movie anyway. You know what
Right.
I mean? It was a lot of just like him doing stuff, and then once in a while it'd be like an acknowledgement of like something like He-Man. where are you? Like you
Yeah.
know, I think his longest like speech was like at the end when he's like saying bye to like Courtney Cox.
Right. Yeah.
You
Courtney Cox, her first movie as well, which is kind of fun
Oh,
to
yeah.
realize. Her first big thing was she was in a Bruce Springsteen video, Dancing in the Dark. That was
Okay.
her first appearance in anything, but this was her first big movie. She had
Nice.
done a TV series called Misfits of Science
Okay.
uh, about a year before. And then this was her first feature, which was pretty cool to see that,
Hmm.
here she is starting out. And also the sorceress was played by Christina Pickles, who plays her mom in Friends, which was kind of fun too. So there was a little Friends tie-in with two of the actors in here.
Nice.
But you also had okay, so the last person they cast in the movie
Hmm.
was Frankel Angela, who played Skeletor with
Mm.
great gusto. I love him as Skeletor. That is to me the highlight of this film. Is every scene with Skeletor is so much fun to watch.
His performance is good. I didn't think the makeup was good. I think the like those hurt his. They don't hurt him, but like it takes something away from his performance. Like looking at him the way he looked and him delivering some of his great
Mhm.
lines, and then like it's just hard to take it seriously because you're looking and you're like, this is like what we would like say today is like this is like Timu Skeletor. He's like just didn't fully look the part.
Right. When he took the role, like when he was offered the role, he took it instantly. He saw the
Yeah.
script, he loved it. His son
Yeah.
was a huge He-Man fan, and he would run
Hmm.
around the house going, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power." So he did it for his son, and he
Yeah.
said it is his favorite role he's ever played. It's one of his most favorite roles. He just loved playing that
Yeah.
character. He loved putting on the makeup. He loved just being like sort
Yeah.
of that, you know,
Yeah.
omnipresent being. But he loved it, and he was willing to do more. If they were, which there was plans for a sequel, which we'll get to.
Before the budget report came back, probably.
Even after, even after,
Ooh.
there were plans. So, but just kind of going through there now. They did not skimp out on effects in this film, and they didn't skimp out on, like I said, we said production design. The effects were done by Boss Studios, which was run by Richard Edlund.
Hmm.
He started out at Industrial Light and Magic on Star Wars, Empire and Jedi, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Those are his food. When he first went on his own, his first movie was Ghostbusters. Then,
Oh, nice.
yeah. So I mean, this is a guy that's
He
solid.
knows.
Yeah, he did, he did Die Hard, he did, all these different huge Hollywood movies. So they picked a great studio to do the
Yeah.
effects, and they did. I think they pulled off the effects pretty well
Yeah.
for that film. Because you look at this movie and it does look good. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't look cheap. It looks like they did. Even going to Earth, it doesn't feel like they cheaped out to me. I feel like they
Mhm.
still were putting in that effort because when you see Skeletor's giant ship come out of the portal and all that stuff, there's a lot that
Yeah.
really looks good in those scenes.
Yeah.
Um,
Or the portal, you notice too at the end, like when they manage to like rejigger the key to get to Grayskull,
mhm.
it like sucks up a portion of the street with the
Yes,
car. That was that was cool.
that was really cool. I thought that was a really nice little touch
Hmm.
in there as well. Now the funny enough too, as the movie was in production, it went. I think it shot for about 56 days or something like that with some night shoots and things like that.
That's not bad.
It got it got to a point where Canon said 3 days before it was supposed to finish shooting, they said, "You're done. No more." They cut it. They stopped it. The movie was not finished being shot. There was still the climax was not shot. None of that
Oh
was
my God.
done. So, but they're like, "We're pulling the plug. We're finished. It's over budget. No more." Gary Goddard begged and begged and begged to let him shoot that final
Yeah, I
scene.
mean,
That
movie's
fun,
not done. What are we gonna do?
right. So they finally said okay. They let him do it. They gave him 3 days. So he
Yeah.
in 3 days finished that sequence. So
Which,
even if that looks a little rushed,
ironically, they could have just let him have the 3 days he was gonna have originally.
they could have. And that probably cost more then because of that gap. Because now you
Yeah.
got to bring everybody back. You got to do all this stuff. You got
Yeah.
to really schedule everything out. It's going to be probably a little bit more complicated
So
at that
stupid.
point. Yes, not a great move on the studio's part, but he got to finish it. And one of the things he got to add to it was that ending sequence. If you watch the credits, I don't know if you watched through the
Well,
entire credits.
I had something I want to say about that. Yeah, that
Yes.
was that was like I let all the credits run because I always do, and
Hmm.
I was just like, did these guys invent the post credit scene?
They're definitely one of the first to do it. I'm not sure if they invented it, but it definitely was one
He
of the
pops his
first.
head out and says, I'll be back," or "I will
Hmm.
return," or something like that.
Yeah, I'll be back. He pops up from the oozing
Yeah,
lava type stuff.
yeah.
But that was done as an end thing. They brought in Frank Langella to do that. Um, so that was kind of cool. So I think they were hoping, hey, we'll make another one, but obviously
Yeah.
it didn't happen, even though it was planned, and we'll get to that. But now talking about some of the things. Now, Dolph Lundgren did a lot of his own stunts in this movie,
Hmm.
like the majority of them. Probably about 90% of them. The reason he did that was because it was a way to save money. They could say, hey, let's not hire a stunt man. Let's just
Hmm.
have this guy do it. That was the studio's idea. If it was a really hard stunt, they would give it to a stuntman. And they had to try because they said it was difficult to find a stuntman that looked like Dolph Lundgren. But I think the reality of it was it was expensive. We could cut back if
That too.
we have him
Yeah.
do his own stuff. So yeah, he did a lot of his own stuff. The guy that played Blade was also a stuntman. He did all the fight coordination and things like that. He actually played Skeletor at the end when they do the battle when he's wearing the gold
Oh, really?
God armor. Yeah, he played that role as well. He he suffered a lot through that film because the armor he wore was about 50 pounds,
Hmm.
and he says it. He had to when they first designed it, it covered his arms and his stuff. He designed it to cut out some of that so he have a little more breathing room and room to move his arms to fight.
Yeah.
So there was in it. He says a lot at the end of the day. He would take his boot and he would dump a lot of sweat out of that because he would just it would be so much for him each day. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
with Meg Foster, who played Evil Lynn. Her corset thing that she wore was fiberglass, and it would grind down in between her hips to a
Hmm.
point where she would just be in extreme pain. So she says
Hmm.
that's why when you look at her, she's standing with her chest puffed out most of the time because it pushed it away from her. So it makes her, but she said it kind of helped her performance in a way that she looked different, like the way she stood was much more, present in that sense. So, but she said
Right.
that was a difficult costume to have to wear through that. The same with the Beast Man, the guy who played Beast Man, his fangs were too big, so he could never close
Hmm.
his mouth. And he said it got to a point where he just drool into his mask. He just would have so much saliva just build up in the chin area. That was a big deal. Mattel had a caveat that none of the characters could die and He-Man could not kill anybody. Those were
Mm.
some of the things. However, they killed off Sauron, the lizard um, villain guy there that had the neck that kind of pulsated there, because Skeletor like makes him disappear, eradicates him.
Yeah.
But He-Man,
Goddard probably said something like, "Well, you said no body. It's a snake
yeah,
person. He's not a bot.
right,
He's not a body." Yeah.
yeah, he got away with that. Now, all the Skeletor's soldiers were robots. That was
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
that way
The guys
He-Man
that
could
look like
chop them.
the guys that look like stormtroopers.
Yes,
Okay.
He-Man could beat them up and do what he had to do with that because
Yeah.
they were robots.
Mhm. Robots.
um, so let's move into Masters of the Universe 2.
Two.
So initially they were going to have She-Ra in this movie. She was going to
Mhm.
come in and help him at the end battle. That was one of the things they planned, but they scrapped it because they were like, well, it's too much. We don't want to explode the budget with more
People
characters,
and
more
stuff.
costumes. So they scrapped it. That was going to happen in the second film. Now they were planning the second film. They actually were planning this, even with the flop of the first film. They had a budget of about $4 million this time to do it. They recast it. They had different He-Man because Dolph Lundgren said no, he would not do another one. Um, and they figured if they're going to recast him, they're going to recast Skeletor. So they actually had there was a surfer guy. I think his name was Laney Hamilton or something. He was cast as He-Man. He was actually cast. They had a full cast ready. They had a script ready. They had sets and everything ready to go in their North Carolina set studio. Um, Canon did. So they were all ready. This movie was actually prepared. They had a director in there, Ian Pune, I think was his name, on Pune, something like that. But he was ready to go. Everything was a go. And then suddenly Mattel's like, we don't want to do this. We don't want you to do it now. We're done.
Oh.
So that killed the project right then and there. Because I think Mattel saw it as just a cheap, it wasn't going to be what the first one was. And the first one didn't do well. So what are we doing here? We don't
Yeah.
want to turn the character into a joke. We want to keep,
Selling stuff.
some, yeah, they were planning at this time too to relaunch He-Man. In 1990, they relaunched He-Man. It was just called He-Man, and that was it. And they had a new animated series and all this stuff. They had a new um, concept behind it. Um, so Masters of the Universe 2 got put aside. However, there is a movie out there that uses the costumes that they had already built for that because Skeletor was all set. Everything was all built. So they moved it into this new movie called Cyborg, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. So Canon said, we need a Van Damme movie. This is our new star. He's our big star. We need to make some money with him. So they created this movie Cyborg, which used all of the stuff, the sets, everything from Master of the Universe 2. So sometimes in some listings, you will see the movie Cyborg listed as Masters of the Universe 2 Cyborg, which is kind of funny. Um, so the movie exists to a weird degree out there. The sequel to the first He-Man movie.
My God.
So, but yeah, if you go look Cyborg up, which came out in 1989, so 2 years after He-Man was released, um, starring Van Damme, that is all the He-Man stuff they were going to use for the second film. Is
What that's
now
really called is recouping our losses because the money
as
was already spent.
as much as possible. And that movie did okay
Mhm.
for on
What it
its
was.
small budget, but it didn't save Canon. Again, by 1990 they were done. They kind of had to close their doors, and they were finished.
Mhm.
But which is too bad because I think regardless of their cheap tactics, they're not the only one. I mean, you've got so many different uh people at that time that were doing that. Um who's the famous guy for that? There was that one. Oh, I can't even remember him. He was anytime there was a movie out, he'd make a cheap version of it. Star Wars. He made his own cheap Star Wars.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
what was his name? It eludes me, but I know. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, there's always room for these kinds of studios. There's people love some of these schlocky, cheap movies, and at that time, that's what these were. They were fodder for the video store. You'd go to the video store, and these would be
Yeah.
those things that sat on the shelf that you'd yeah, they were made straight for video. They were there, that was the thing. Roger Corman, that's his name. It just finally clicked in my head. He was
Weirdly, I was thinking about him because of our foray with Fantastic Four, but I didn't think that that
Mhm.
was who it was.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what he did. He just made those cheap movies on the cheap that were just reminiscent of other things. And um yeah, that's why, that's what Canon did. They made these cheap movies. And if you ever go back, look at like I love watching a lot of these, but like there's the Adventures of Hercules with Lou Ferrigno and all, like these are these cheap movies that were like, we can't do Conan on that budget, but we can do this. So they would make these really simple movies, but they were fun for their own,
Yeah.
in their own way. Just as this movie is, and I'll say this about this movie. This movie knows exactly what it is, and it
Hmm.
makes no apologies for it. It doesn't,
Hmm.
it's like, hey, we're a toy movie. This is about
Yeah.
toys. Hey, we're gonna have fun with it. And I think they
Yeah.
they did a good job with that.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, I guess looking back, even with all the warts that are across this film, what would you say? Would you recommend people watch this
I'd
or?
say I'd say to give it a whirl. I mean, it was like a 3. It's like out of 5. It's not the worst thing you're ever gonna watch. It's got its like campiness. It's got
Mhm.
its place. Um, I would be shocked if the new one that's coming out is not better than than than
I
the
would
one
be
we
too.
just watched. But yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely it gave me something to like. as a framework, now I know like Eternia is where they come from. I know that Grayskull is
Hmm.
like the source of the power. Like, there's,
Hmm.
it'll give you just enough of the story beats. So,
Hmm.
and again, like you said, it was a toy movie, so
Hmm.
the lore only goes so deep anyway.
Hmm. Correct. Yeah, it's as deep as it can. But
Yeah.
the original, they originally had as a production designer and or at least concept artist for this was Ralph McQuarrie. Ralph McQuarrie, who did Star Wars concepts. He was the reason that Star Wars sold was because his concept art was what Lucas used when he went to the studios. But
Mhm.
he had done all this artwork for He-Man and Skeletor's costume and the sets and things like that before they, scrapped that version and went with what they did. But
Yeah.
they were serious with this. This movie was from the get-go. They had it where they wanted it to be a big deal. They wanted this to
Mhm.
be a big budget movie. This wasn't like a straight to video. This was going to be the summer movie to see.
Yeah.
At least they hoped it would be. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember as a kid, my brother and I loved He-Man. We had a lot of the toys, and when
Mhm.
we used to, and we had a subscription to the magazine. There was a Master Universe magazine that would come in every month, or at least quarterly. I think it might have been. It might have been like once every few months, and it
Mhm.
had the news in there of with the issues where it was just focused on the movie, and it was like, wow, this looks amazing. Oh, I can't wait. We were so excited about it. I
Mhm.
did not get to see it in theaters. I didn't get to see it till it came out on VHS for the
Mhm.
first time. So I missed out on that, but I don't think it was out very long. It kind of
Mhm.
came and went very quickly. I think it was released in August of '87, which was kind of like that's like the dumping ground for summer movies. Like when a
Yeah, I was
movie's
gonna say
not,
that's not really a blockbuster at that point.
yeah, once you get to August, it's kind of like here's what's left for summer.
Yeah.
Um, and it didn't fare well in that sense, but it's too bad that we couldn't have gotten a nice franchise out of that back in those days. It would have been interesting to see where they could have gone with it with the
Yeah.
same actors if they had been able to. But
Well, we'll see if
it,
that if they do better with the redo, and maybe they'll get their sequel
agreed.
that time.
And one thing I'll say is I was hesitant and at first when I first heard they were doing it because I'm like, we'll see how this works. But as I saw the production art, the stills and things come out, and I saw like the first teaser trailer and things like that, I'm like, okay, this looks interesting. And the last trailer was good. Then I saw who the director was, and I'm like, oh, now I'm really interested because the director directed Kubo and the Two Strings. He directed like Paranorman. He did all these really great stop motion animation movies for Leica, and I
Yeah.
love all those films. So I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
now I'm really excited to see this because his work on that is just incredible. So I'm hoping that sensibility is brought in. So much like other animators that have gone into live action, like Brad Bird, who went on to do, from Incredibles and things like that, to do Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, which was fantastic. And
Yeah.
then Andrew, what's his name? He directed Finding Nemo and Wall-E, and he went on to direct which a show we should tackle for this podcast at some point, John Carter, in 2011, which I thought was fabulous. So there's like these these animators that go into live action. I think they have a really interesting sensibility. So I'm really looking forward to see what he brings
Yeah.
to this film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for it. So it's one movie that I'm actually really like I want to go see. I'm like I want to be there in the theater and I want to see this. And my kids are even excited. So I actually it's
Nice.
funny. I showed my son, my youngest son, he watched Master of the Universe with me because I'm like I'm gonna watch this. I got to watch this for upcoming episode we're doing. So I'm like, you want to watch it? He goes, yeah. He sat and watched the whole thing. Normally he'll get up
Good.
and he'll leave or he'll say, can we stop and watch it later? He liked it. He's like, that was good. He's like,
Yeah.
but his only questions were, where was Merman? Where was all these other characters that were in the toys and the cartoon that
Yeah.
didn't make it? But I said they just didn't have the money for him then.
Yeah. That's true.
But so but he actually liked the movie, and I was surprised because this is here's a kid that's not from that era, but I showed him he loved the cartoon when he was really little. And
Mhm.
he has some of the figures in his room, and he sets them up and he puts them up on the shelves and stuff. So he knew the He-Man lore and he knew the stuff. So going into the movie, he
Mhm.
had an idea, and he
Yeah.
still enjoyed it. So I was it does have some effect on there. So I guess that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
Definitely. Like I said, it wasn't like terrible. Like there's some things that we
No.
watched have been pretty schlocky, and like this was
Of
like
course.
middle of the road, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that for sure. And I remember watching it as a kid, being disappointed that, but
Mhm.
I loved all the Eternia stuff, but the Earth stuff, I was like, oh, it's kind of eh. But going
Mhm.
back and, over I've seen it many times over the years, and I still like to watch it here and there. But going back and watching it, I was like, the more I watched it, I was like, it's not that bad. There's a lot of stuff in there that really works and that's
Yeah.
good. And just even just the look of it, the effects, everything like that really comes together in that film and it elevates it in some way. The score by Bill Conti is so good, like the theme and
The
everything like
theme and the
that.
score was good. Yeah, I did enjoy
Yeah.
that. Like actually, like it actually almost sounded like Superman. Like it wasn't the
Hmm.
same, but like it had some of those beats to it. So
Yep. Yeah, Bill Conti was most notable for doing the scores for Rocky, the Rocky films, and Karate Kid were his big ones,
okay.
among others. But that one was, I thought, was a really great score of his. He did a really good job with the theme.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there you go. I mean, there's some crazy, the crazy road it took for them to make this film, and then the failure it was. But the property still thrives, so
Mhm.
it's still out there. Kids are still seeing it. There's a 24-hour He-Man Prime channel that just shows the cartoon every day.
Nice.
So it's still out there, and there's still people interested. So what I'm interested to see this time is, will the kids attach to this? Because
Hmm.
there's a gamble here with Mattel. Mattel
Right.
has been marketing, like they've been selling He-Man toys for the last like 5, 6 years, 7 years,
Yeah.
again. But they tried this again in 2001 and and it's always been collectors that have been kind of attached to it.
Right.
It's been it's all those ones that grew up with it that like it.
Yeah.
They've actually made a line specifically for kids this time. These are
Hmm.
for kids. I want the kids to get. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see if that takes off.
Yeah.
See if kids
So,
really respond to this.
yeah, they're trying to market stuff to everybody, so that way, like the grown-ups are the ones going for the giant, sword,
Mhm.
drink cup, or you know what I mean, and
Yes.
the kids can have the action figures. So,
Right. Yep. Yep. So it should be
yep,
good. All right.
yep.
So we'll any last words on Masters of the Universe before we
I think that it's a good summer to be a Masters of the Universe fan. The new
agreed?
movie looked great, and hopefully, whether you're a longtime fan or you're a novice, it looks like something we can all enjoy.
Yeah, definitely does. All right. So we'll pick up. I know our next one, we're gonna hit the next one of the next big summer movies. So we're gonna look at Supergirl next, which will be fun.
Hmm.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.